Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and on this episode, we're going to be talking a little Commanders and Titans action. Yes, I know the game you all want to watch, of course. But this is the Touring the AFC South show. Of course, we're going to keep it AFC South. And I brought on someone that is a Commanders fan and has definitely got some things to talk about and be excited about. You may have seen him on the Domonique Foxworth show, or you may have heard him on the Domonique Foxworth show. He is the co-host of the Domonique Foxworth show, Mr. Charlie Kravitz. What's going on, man?
Not much. Thank you for having me. Day after Thanksgiving. I'm glad we could get this in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, I thank you for coming on. And man, we have a good bit to talk about with these Commanders and Titans. But before we do any of that, of course, we have to do the Get It Off Your Chest segment. I do that on every episode, whether it's on something from the AFC South or a team outside of it, or it could be NBA, anything. And this one, I had one that I wanted to go with, but Thanksgiving gave me another one that to replace it with. We were going to talk about the Houston Texans, but we're not going to talk about the Houston Texans. We're going to talk about the Chicago Bears. Now, for those that didn't watch it, or some that may have been sleeping, taking a nap after eating their first plate, Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions played on Thursday. Good gracious, I'm already trying to rush the week away. But they had a chance to come back. The Bears were getting dominated. Then they came back in the game. Then they had a drive. They were down 23-20, chance to tie the game. They're moving down the field. They're halfway down the field. It's like 8 seconds left, third down and whatever. And they've got a timeout in their pocket. Keep that in mind, folks. They have a timeout in their pocket. The next play they line up, they basically, Caleb scrambles around, throws a deep pass, and it wastes all the time. They don't even get a field goal chance, anything at all. Ball game over. They lose 23-20. Their losing streak extended to, 6 games at this point? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just like, okay, I'm watching this game, and I'm like, Eburflus, Caleb Williams, where is the time management? I mean, were you watching it what are they doing?
Yeah, so I mean that second down play ended with 33 seconds left, and they took their next snap, the final snap of the game, with 4 seconds. It was 29 seconds wasted, and look, there's a lot to talk about in this game because we had the all-time Jekyll and Hyde Caleb Williams performance where I think he was 7 for 18 for 54 yards at one point, and then caught fire and showed everyone why he was a deserving and impressive number 1 overall pick because of this was one of the interesting things Romo talked about was his mechanics are almost too good to fail. He has so much talent, so much arm ability. And he does the Mahomes thing where he actually uses the sideline as a defender against the defenders where people are afraid to hit him near the sideline. I know he got rocked, but he has those little flip passes when he gets right near the right sideline. But I am actually not going to – a lot of people are just crushing Eburflus today, and that's completely right. Unbelievably bad clock management. I can't absolve Caleb of that as well, even though he's a rookie. Dude, you're the quarterback. If you can't get everyone on the line, just call the timeout. You have to be more aware of this. You're staring at the game clock out of the back of the end zone, and you've just taken that sack to make it a 59-yard field goal. But I know you want another play, but you have to give your team a chance to win. Both of them. There was no adult in the room, not Eburflus or Caleb.
Right. And the funny part is, I don't know if you read the quote that Eburflus said about going for it and taking the shot. And I'm like, okay, wrong time for that quote. And then Caleb comes out and says about what he says. And I'm like, both of you, please don't talk to the media with the energy you had after that game. Dude, just just avoid it.
It's so funny because I do want to I can't say this enough because I think I've tried to be fair about when Caleb Williams played bad and being willing to say that despite the fact that the prospect evaluation is still so high on him. He's just played his 3 most impressive games as a pro. It's fine, dude. You're about surviving the season. Just admit, hey, guys, yeah, we effed up. The clock management was terrible. I mean, Eburflus is out here being I'm confident we'll be prepared for the 49ers next week. Dude, you're not prepared for any situation. You should not be confident you'll be prepared. You should not be confident you will be on the team. You will be on the plane.
Right. It just I'm trying to figure this one out, and Eburflus is he's either got pictures on the owner or he's Teflon Don out there. Something is going on then why he still has a job as the coach of the Chicago Bears for sure. I mean that's all I got. I mean, can you think of anything else?
I mean, this is like good guy syndrome where it's like maybe it's not what he says, but the way he says it, and people might like him. It must be the type of thing. But no, I mean, honestly, it doesn't make sense to me other than the fact that I guess at this point, if you've already fired Waldron, Thomas Brown, who's doing a much better job with Caleb, letting him be a relaxed quarterback, like I guess you would make him the head coach, but this is someone who is not even a coordinator 2 weeks ago. So I just wonder if they're just like, we need to make it through the end of the season. We're going to get another high pick. Caleb is now developing, and that's okay. I mean, that's sort of a loser mentality when you have this defense and this amount of skill position guys, and your over under at the start of the season was 8.5 wins. Like we've forgotten it because of how big of a mess the Bears have been and how they've lost these games, but their expectations were a lot higher than this because of the talent on the roster.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, it's just a lot going on. I mean, I've listened to Jason Goff and his podcast, and I have a few Bears friends that actually have their own podcast too with Team NBS Media. And boy, oh boy, I mean, the vitriol coming towards Mr. Eburflus, Caleb, anything going on has been rough to hear. I mean, you got any final thoughts on this one before we wrap it up?
I just the only thought I had was I did wonder if Ben Johnson was standing on that sideline of the Lions. I know he's been rumored to be the Bengals coach next year if they get rid of Zach Taylor, was standing on that sideline being like, yes, I'm on a team that's a juggernaut. Yes, I might win the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator of this Lions team, which is so complete. And their first half was so dominant running the ball. But I do wonder if he looked across the sideline and was like, I have a quarterback who's far exceeded expectations, who has his own limitations. And I look across there, and this guy, Caleb, is being coached up terribly. Imagine what I could do with no limitations. I thought that that this job was highly overrated 3 weeks ago, but seeing the way that Caleb has played against the tougher part of his schedule now, this would be really interesting if you got a good offensive mind there. This is something my co-host Domonique would completely disagree with. He says you need to have a manager as a head coach, get a defensive guy, and hire the right coordinator. I don't know. Ben Johnson takes so much pressure off his quarterbacks, and if you have someone with that type of talent, I just wonder if a tiny part of him looked during that comeback and was like, there's a big difference talent-wise between Williams and Goff.
Yeah, you gotta wonder. I mean, I remember looking at one picture or still shot of him smiling when he's facing against another team. I was like, okay, yeah, he's thinking about that other team right now. But we kind of want to get off. Let me get off the Chicago Bears and the doom and gloom. We want to talk about happier times for you, and that would be the Washington Commanders. Going into this season, I got to ask you, what were your expectations for this team?
Not high. I thought that there was a chance because of Daniels and because we had Peters has done a really good job. We have had some impact defensive signings. We got Johnny Newton with far under his expected draft slot. I was like, maybe we'll be the good, bad team, but I thought we would be considerably worse than the Eagles, but Eagles and the Cowboys. And I was really looking at a 7-10 season and just seeing Daniels play well. Cause I thought, I'm going to be completely transparent. Going into the draft, I wanted them to pick Drake May because of the age and the arm talent and the size. And he's excellent, but I didn't realize how, even though Daniels had a late breakout age at LSU after his first stop at Arizona, how sort of dynamic he would be and how much of an adult he would be immediately, and how much of a weapon his deep passing would be. So, they've already exceeded expectations despite the rough part of the season for me. So I can't get mad when they do old school Commanders things against the Cowboys in that game. This is what happens with young, dumb football teams.
Yeah. They, I would say, definitely I didn't have great expectations. I think my expectations were kind of linked more to Dan Quinn and looking at the end of his Atlanta tenure, as opposed to looking at the beginning of it when he came in on fire, which he has obviously done with the Commanders. But, has your expectations as you've watched them the start of the season, things like that, and the expectation you had of a 7-10 season, did that start changing, or at what point did it start changing for you?
So, it changed with the Bengals game when Caleb
Mhm.
they were in the midst of like a completely unsustainable hot streak where they weren't punting for 3 straight
Mhm.
weeks. And yeah, the defense was terrible, but that was the point when Caleb was playing with, or sorry, Jaden Daniels was playing with a lot more tempo and rushing Kliff Kingsbury and allowing more vertical threats. And the superpower he has is how accurate of a downfield passer he is. And Kliff's limitation is he wants to do that horizontal air raid where you're getting the ball out to the flats a lot. And when the offense stalls, it's because they're not being quite aggressive enough. So that moment when he went toe to toe with Burrow, and I know it's not quarterback first quarterback, but Burrow's been established as one of the guys now in the league for several years, and Jaden Daniels looked completely like I can be one of those guys too, really early in the season. That's what flipped the expectation to being like, wow, this offense is a playoff worthy offense.
Got you. And another question I do have, do you think the current expectations that you have are kind of reasonable for the Commanders right now? And are you smelling potentially playoffs for the
Yeah.
Washington Commanders?
Was this interesting? If they don't beat the Titans, they're not making the playoffs. It's not happening. But I think the playoffs are reasonable. My expectations spiked when they were 7-2 to like maybe they'll win a playoff game and play like sort of where the Texans were last year, which is win a playoff game, have a good showing against a better team in the divisional round, like they did against like CJ Stroud and the Texans did against the Ravens, where like, okay, the talent's not here. It's like that's the ceiling for this team. I still think that's the ceiling. The likely outcome is just making a wild card game. They need to win 3 more games. They're going to need to beat the Cowboys in the last week of the season, get 1 more win, and beat the Titans this week, because they sort of squandering that Cowboys game was pretty important for their ease to get to 10 wins and make the playoffs in the NFC.
Got you. Yeah, we're going to kind of discuss their last few weeks. They've been on the 3-game slide, but
yeah,
we're going to get into that more, but we got to take a quick commercial break on Touring the AFC South.
Welcome to Houston, Texas, where the Texans going live with Lil Kane on
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are 2 of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off all these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get the EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South, episode 309. We're talking about the Tennessee Titans going against the Washington Commanders, but we're getting to know the Washington Commanders. Now, the Washington Commanders have had a recent 3-game slide, kind of capped off with the loss to the Cowboys. But of course, the Steelers and the Eagles were before those. Mm-hmm. And kind of noticing those losses, I did notice that they've allowed an average of almost 30 points per game, pretty much. They've definitely the rushing yards, the Steelers definitely kind of did their thing, and so did the Eagles as well. And I'm just noticing it's kind of like a pattern per se there. Now, is this pattern kind of alarming to you going into what the expectations were, and they rose, and then now they're hitting this point of the season?
That's interesting, because at the beginning of the year when they were winning games, the defense was the worst defense in the NFL by a wide margin. And then Quinn, who's a very good defensive coach, seemed to drag them to middle of the pack for a few weeks. But no, I mean, like, the Eagles game is not surprising. The Cowboys loss is the loss that it hurts, because they just played such a sloppy classic Commanders football game where it's just like give give away the game type of football. I mean, you could look at that stretch. They probably should have, and you can never say should have because the better team always wins. The team who plays better on that given day. But they could have beaten the Steelers and the Cowboys, and probably were the more talented teams on both those days. Yeah, I mean, this defense is not going to be good. It's a year away from being a year away on the defense. I know that things can move more quickly with defense and offense because of how fickle it is to predict that stuff. But no, it's none of this is out of the realm of the expectations for this team, particularly if you watch the defense for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season when they weren't punting, but they were not forcing punts. That is for sure.
Got you. Now, offensively, you mentioned Kliff Kingsbury and him wanting to do the horizontal raid versus the vertical raid. And it just seems like the offense is kind of a little bit off. And, the mumblings and the rumblings are happening about Kliff Kingsbury and how he got off to a hot start with Arizona. And then once teams started figuring him out, they kind of, the offense kind of muddled up. Are you kind of noticing those things, or do you think it's more in the injuries with Jaden and dealing with the ribs and things like that?
Both. I mean, I think the Daniels rib thing is like looking at Justin Herbert from last year to this year. And I know Herbert ended up hurting his hand also last year, but like that's a really dynamic football player, regardless of how many slow receivers they put around him. And when he had this injury that Daniels had, he wasn't close to the player he was prior. I think Daniels, the stats are pretty alarming from pre and post rib injury. They're converting less than half as many third downs. Any play that's longer than 2.5 seconds, he's not really scrambling anymore. His runs are designed. And when it comes to Kingsbury, like I think Daniels is totally on the right track. He's awesome. To me, he's been the most impressive rookie quarterback. But Kingsbury, I think it's impossible to overlook. This is, I think you can throw out the college stats where it happened in college too, because they were going from playing cupcakes to conference schedule. It's not the same, but it's impossible to overlook what happened in Arizona and Washington, that he just seems to run out of juice midway through the season. I don't think he's a bad offensive coordinator. I thought he called a terrible game against Dallas. I think they got dominated at the line of scrimmage, and he's been oddly protective of letting Jaden play with tempo and drive the ball downfield, and that's the winning formula. But no, I mean, I'm sort of in a holding pattern. If this continues to this for the rest of the season, they don't get to 10 wins. I think a lot of that will be on offensive ineptitude with the play calling and Kliff.
Yeah, Kliff has gotten by on a lot of different things. I've kind of noticed that about his career. He went to Texas Tech, then he was going to be the offensive coordinator at USC. Then all of a sudden, he pops up and he's the head coach of Arizona, and I'm like, okay, what is going on here? So yeah. It just kind of like makes you shake your head. You're like, okay, have they not figured out that he can't sustain an offense through a season yet, or is he going to just fool you every single time and keep climbing up? And now people are even mentioning his name as a potential NFL head coach again. And I'm like, hold on.
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's tough. Like this team doesn't really. I love McLaurin. He's probably an elite number 2 receiver, not a real number 1. They do not have a lot of offensive talent outside of Daniels. Like Daniels has really elevated the guys around him. So I can't they've exceeded expectations. Even in that Cowboys game, they scored 26 points. They missed 2 extra points, so points. That's enough points to win in the NFL quite frequently. So it's not like the offense has been a huge problem. It's just that the expectations were set a lot higher when they looked like they're going to be a historic unit at the start of the year, despite the talent limitations. So I'm in a holding pattern with Kliff. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll give you a we'll see. I'll check back in 5 weeks on that. Got you.
I'm gonna reach out and ask because I'm like, I don't know what to say about him. I'm kind of like, I see, the glitz and glamour, and I was giving him his props when the offense was cooking, and and rightfully so. But I had to quickly remind myself of what I saw in Arizona when Kyler Murray was just destroying teams out there, and then all of a sudden it just went to poo just like that. So it's just like, yeah. So one other thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's interesting. The Arizona stuff is interesting because there's always an explanation. 1 year, Kyler got hurt halfway through the season and wasn't the same player. like, oh, 1 year all of our skill guys got hurt, and like there's always an explanation for Kliff that seems reasonable in a vacuum, but it's just hard to believe all of them when it happens for like 6 straight years.
Right. I mean, another person that sometimes I wonder if he has dirt on teams and that's why he's still there. I kind of wonder that sometimes, or I'm like, man, he's done something to just continue. I don't know. I'm amazed that he continues to, even though he is, a solid offensive guy, he's just not a guy that can sustain things, and that's what kind of perplexes me about him. And finally, I want to ask about during this slide defensively. You mentioned bad defense, then got better defense, then back to bad defense. I mean, do you think there's some ups left in this defense, or do you think they are who they are at this point?
Yeah, Lattimore playing will make a big difference. Getting St. Juste off the field, like that's a game changer. I mean, he's been a disaster the last couple of weeks, and you trade for Marshawn Lattimore, you think you have a physical playmaking corner, and he just hasn't played yet. So that's a huge change because their secondary is like a war crime. It's an atrocity.
Oh man, yeah. Watching them on tape, yeah, I do kind of shake my head a lot because I played. I didn't play in the professional ranks, but I did play all the way through college. So yeah, kind of watching, and I'm like, man, what is he doing? I'm literally watching, saying, what is he doing, over and over again, and I'm talking about your boy. So I'm like, I don't know what is going on, but he's not doing it right.
No, that's the vibe with it. Everyone is frustrated with it. I mean, it's their secondary foibles, taking Forbes over Christian Gonzalez, having St. Juste out there. Sanders Hill's been great, but they need to figure out the secondary because, I mean, this is like another way to generate a pass rush is to actually have elite coverage downfield, and they need all the help they can get in both those departments, sort of rushing teams and making them uncomfortable because they don't have a lot of ways to make teams uncomfortable right now defensively. Right. And, there's only so much you can get by with schemes and simulated pressures when you don't have the horses out there. So it's a work in progress for that defense.
Right. And it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason to kind of address the pass rush because I'm pretty sure they're going to be looking for a pass rusher and a couple teams that probably have a few that are available. But of course, don't want to kind of rush to the offseason. We're still talking about this season. And of course, we do got to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get into these Titans versus the Commanders. And pretty sure you want to talk about the Mayo Messiah a couple times. But all right, we're going to do that after the commercial break. We'll be right back.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
And we're back on Touring the AFC South, and we opened the show with the Get Off Your Chest segment, talking about the Bears and Matt Eburflus. Well, we do have breaking news. Matt Eburflus, he got the pink slip. He is gone.
But in a commercial break.
Yeah, it actually happened. He is gone. Matt Eburflus, yep, Bears fans rejoice. He is out of there. So, yeah, just came through. It just came through. So Thomas Brown is actually going to take over as the interim head coach for the Chicago Bears. So there we go. Bears fans are rejoicing. I know Mr. Goff has got his Thanksgiving wish of getting Eburflus up out of there. He's got, he's got to talk about mechanics doing surgery. Yeah, mechanics will not be doing surgery anymore for the Bears this season. So
a very happy day for Bears fans. Yes, they might have been tough, but they've been waiting on this for offseason 2 years ago. I can't believe this is still going on. This is like a 17-month adventure where they wanted this guy fired. So I think this is a good Black Friday gift for Bears fans everywhere.
Definitely. But of course, we got to get back to the game that actually we're talking about, be the Titans and Commanders. Now, I know everyone is not very high on the Tennessee Titans, let alone the AFC South. I mean, I cover the AFC South, and I've done it pretty much for, 3 seasons now. Haven't necessarily had a couple teams getting in the playoffs yet. I thought this year might be the year, but, that proved me wrong as well. Well, I did get right, though. I did get right that the Jacksonville Jaguars would finish last in this division. I did have that, and I actually said it on 1010XL, which is like the flagship radio station for Jacksonville, and of course received a lot of vitriol for that. But now they know I'm right. But the Titans, of course. Let's get to the Titans. They had a big win versus the Houston Texans, and I mean, I gotta say, Will Levis did not look bad. I mean, the last 3 games, he has not looked bad. 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 67.9% completion percentage, and over 120 QPR the last 3 games. Does that make you a little nervous with what he's been doing with guys like Nick Westbrook-Kenny, Calvin Ridley, Chigaquanko racing 70 yards for a touchdown, and Tony Pollard being the second leading rusher in the AFC at this point?
I mean, the Pollard thing, I actually think the Pollard thing is fascinating because a lot of people have focused on the running backs being sort of a turbo button for teams that are ready to compete, whether it's Josh Jacobs. I guess Josh Jacobs went to the Packers, Aaron Jones went to the Vikings, both of them for NFC North, and then the Saquon and Derrick Henry thing. And we're looking at this being like, oh, this makes sense. All of these teams are trying to compete for Super Bowls, deep playoff runs right now. Adding a talented running back makes a huge difference. The Titans, that weren't necessarily right there. They were sort of in a weird purgatory before the season where a lot of people were like, oh, I like the talent they accrued, but they're not that good of a team. Pollard being this excellent is a reminder that sometimes it takes a couple years to come back from that broken leg that he suffered 2 years ago. And last year was sort of a wash. But it's an outlier in this whole when and how you should sign running backs discussion that's happening in football nerddom everywhere, because he's showing that you can be a playmaker on a team that's not always playing from a positive game script because of, he can create explosives on his own. And I've always loved Chig.
Same. I've always been a big Chig fan, man. He reminded me of He reminded me of a more physical version of Jonnu Smith, because Jonnu Smith actually played for the Titans, of course, and they did all different things with him. He reminds me of a more physical, violent runner, but the same skill set as Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain parts of him where he plays the way that I think that like an Evan Ingram should play, where he's just like freakishly athletic, but he's more willing to be a physical guy. I would love to know what you think about Levis, because he's a conundrum to me, because obviously I like the physical tools, but he just all the focus on Anthony Richardson, but Will Levis at the start of the year did as much dumb stuff as Anthony Richardson did.
I would say he probably did more, but I would say this: he's a guy that works extremely hard. That's the one thing that everyone overlooks and because of the things that happen. But he's a guy that works extremely hard. He just had to, I think, get over the hero complex, because you listen to him in press conferences, because I'm at the press conferences, so I sit there and listen to him after the games, and he's like, you can tell it really hurts him to lose one, and you can also tell that he wants to help be the reason they win, and I think that's part of the thing he had to get over. Playing hero ball at times in terms of it's just, making plays that weren't there, as opposed to just taking what the defense was giving you. Now, I will say that his pocket presence does kind of remind you of Ryan Tannehill, and that's not a good thing, because, Ryan Tannehill didn't have the greatest pocket presence out there. However, he has kind of settled in more into the Brian Callahan offense, and everyone seems to have settled. And he talked about this week about basically being more comfortable in the offense, and everyone kind of feeling more comfortable, which is kind of translating to them having these enormous plays. Like, I mean, honestly, I was at the Vikings game, and they should have actually won that game or it been closer if it weren't for penalties in terms of the offensive line. They're calling more of the tackle being in the backfield, legal formation. Yeah, that took away a 50-yard touchdown and a big, like, 20 or 30-yard gain from the Tennessee Titans. They would have been 23-20 going in the fourth quarter if that doesn't happen. And Calvin Ridley has a huge touchdown pass. But yeah, so that's the thing I'm noticing about them. They're kind of figuring things out, and they're more explosive now, which is what I thought they would be to start the season. But it's better late than never, and Will Levis seems to be figuring out. And now Titans fans are over here thinking like, okay, could he be the guy or not? Now some Titans fans are thinking that way. Other Titans fans are like, nah, let's go ahead and move on. And amazingly, they want a particular gentleman that is out west right now. Some do. That would be Shadeur Sanders. That's what some Titans fans really, really want.
Is he your favorite college guy of the quarterbacks out there?
Oh, I like Shadeur. I do like Shadeur. I can't say he's I like him and Cam Ward, because Cam Ward was the other side of the pillow, but I like both of them. It's hard for me to choose between both those guys.
I'm really fascinated by Cam Ward. Like, I know stylistically he's going to have to change, because he, is so willing to hold the ball and make extreme plays and be slightly too casual. But his talent level, it pops off the screen, and he's a big guy. I think we're looking at 6'3", 230-ish when he gets to the combine. He's going to measure a lot better than Shadeur. That's the one I'm really fascinated by, seeing how he plays in the NFL, because I don't know if you've heard there's a story, I've referenced it before, but how Patrick Mahomes I'm not comparing Cam Ward to Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes said that part of the reason he was sloppier in college was he realized he had to score touchdowns in every possession because of their defense. And part of the Cam Ward thing is I think he has to play this hyper aggressive, hyper playmaking style, because he thinks he needs to carry that Miami team to wins it every single week. Every single tough game they have, it's going to be on his shoulders. And I do wonder if he tamps down some of those bad habits in the NFL when he's playing with talent that's more equal to what he is. That's the one where I'm like, I'd really like to see him in a good situation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. And, looking at it, Shadeur, I would say Shadeur tried to do some of the same things previous year. And he did at times, but, of course, ultimately he couldn't overcome that bad defense and that bad offensive line. So, but getting back to the Titans, does the offense scare your defense? Does the way they're playing scare your defense? I mean, they scored 30 points this week, and they didn't have, I would say the previous time they did it with a safety and a defensive score, I believe. This time they did it with just the offense.
Look, every offense should scare the Commanders defense right now. That's just it. If you're going to get rocked by Cooper Rush and Russell Wilson, who had played very mediocre football in the game against Washington. Yeah. Like a Tennessee offense that's coming together, which, by the way, people have weirdly warped expectations about how fast this should be. Like Kyle Shanahan's every stop, it's taken him a year to put it together. You had Mike McDonald defensively with the Ravens, where it took him a year or most of a year to put it together. Coordinators aren't all like McVay, where it's like you go in and you just completely revolutionize the offense immediately, or Mike McDaniel in Miami, where it's like, oh my God, this guy's the next McVay the second he started getting Tyreek out there. So no, I mean, this is a team that could absolutely, would I be shocked if the Titans hung 30 on the Commanders? No, definitely not.
I hear you there, man. I hear you there. So, of course, I don't want to talk just all about the offense of the Tennessee Titans, which, I will say this. I was the first person to kind of coin the term Mayo Messiah. I was the first one to say that one.
I love it.
Yeah. So I don't know if Will Levis even knows I even came up with that or even has heard it, but, I did come up with that one. And of course, a lot of people were talking about him being the quarterback, and I kind of said that one and ran with it, of course. But let's switch over to the defense. And the Washington Commanders have to deal with T'Vondre Sweat, a.k.a. Meatloaf, and Jeffrey Simmons. Yeah, his nickname is Meatloaf. He said his aunt gave him the nickname Meatloaf. He doesn't like Baldinger tried to give him a nickname of T-Pain, But he was like, nah, I got, my aunt gave me the nickname Meatloaf as a kid. So he rolls with Meatloaf. So Meatloaf and Jeffrey Simmons in there versus the Commanders' offensive line. How nervous should they be with those big behemoths inside?
I mean, there's a chance that the Washington running game is not going to get going at all. Brian Robinson's coming off an ankle sprain. I don't think that we're going to have Eckler playing for maybe the rest of the season, but we'll see. I certainly don't think he's going to be playing this week. If Daniels isn't running the ball and they're really in a tough place getting any easy plays on the ground, that's really worrisome. I don't think it's going to be a situation where, despite how good both of those guys are, they're going to be like caving in and forcing a ton of like pressures where Daniel's not going to be able to get the ball out of his hands. But I think we could see a really, really, really limited Washington running game this week. And that's a huge advantage for the Titans defense.
Yeah, I would say this. Despite those two guys in there being big behemoths, both of them can actually rush the passer too.
Yeah.
And the thing that it's forced now with Devondre Sweat in there is it's forced teams to actually give Jeffrey Simmons less attention at times, which that's insane.
Yeah.
Giving him more attention, giving him less attention. Wow, that is almost like a revolutionary tag team, like in WWE when you got all those different tag teams out there. I could say I'll put that out there. They're the Harlem Heat of the NFL. I'll give them that.
I mean, what Simmons did to the Texans offensive line, like he brutalized them. It seemed like it was so clinical how he was able to just dominate guys in front of him. Granted, the Texans have their offensive line's really bad. Their offensive line's which is not to take anything away from the Titans' defensive line, but it was. Hopefully we'll be able to scheme the ball out of Daniel's hands quick enough and be able to get ahead of the sticks so that those guys don't just cave everything in and get Daniels uncomfortable, but we'll see. I mean, I think I'm still confident in the Washington offense moving the ball week to week.
They're going to make more plays
in the red zone, but they're going to make plays.
Oh yeah, they're definitely going to make plays. I'm definitely not crazy enough to think that Kliff Kingsbury is going to at least make some plays. It's just a matter of, is the consistency going to be there to finish off these drives?
Score touchdowns. Got to score touchdowns.
Yes, exactly. Especially with how hot this Titans offense is right now. But there is a chink in the armor when it comes to the the Titans offense. That is the offensive line, especially the right side of the offensive line. Now you have Skoronski and J.C. Latham on one side, and you have the center, which Lloyd Cushenberry is out for the season. He tore his Achilles a couple weeks ago. So you have Daniel Brunskill, which is a veteran, played for the 49ers. He's actually stepped in at center. But you have a rotating cast on that right-hand side of that offensive line for the Titans. And, of course, they gave up 8 sacks last week, by the way. So I think the Commanders might have a little action when it comes up front, especially trying to overload that right side of the Titans offensive line.
This is a movable. This is a movable force against a stoppable object. In these two units. I mean, the Washington defensive line got dominated at the line of scrimmage by the Cowboys, which is not a great sign. They have to play better. They have to hold up at the point of attack against the Titans. To have a chance of keeping Washington in a positive game script and establishing a lead in this game. But this team has been two different defenses depending on the weeks. There was a chunk in the middle of the season when they were average, above average, and then where they've been like exceptionally weak and gotten run over. Like you have to hope for a continued improvement from Johnny Newton. You have to hope for a big Frankie Louvu game, and you have to hope for just a lot of hats on the ball, because this is not going to be a team that's overwhelming you with talent on the defensive side of the ball.
Gotcha. Yeah, Frankie Louvu. I enjoy watching him play.
Yeah.
Yes, he has. I've got to say he has been great. Has been a great signing for the Commanders this offseason. I still wish they would have kept Cameron Curl. I still wish they would have, but I don't understand why they didn't keep him, but it is what it is.
Neither do I. Like, there's one of the few draft and develop guys they got late and would have been very helpful on this team. Like, we need all of the secondary depth we can get.
Yeah, he's just been a guy for the Rams. So he hasn't been like a star for the Rams, but he's just been a guy for the Rams. I think he would have been a star for the Commanders in this defense. But hey, it is what it is, and it is what it is at this point. But just got to get your thoughts when it's all said and done. In this game, do you like the chances of the Commanders pulling this off against the Titans, or are you kind of on the fence right now?
I think the Commanders are going to win this game. I do.
Okay.
I think they're the better and more complete team. And it's also like, this is a hungry dog run fast game, to quote that old Philadelphia defensive line. Like, this is a playoff game for them. They need to win this game to have a chance of not having a very disappointing end to the season.
Got you. We'll definitely see what happens. But of course, we've reached the end of the show. But we have not reached, quite the end. There's always a game at the end of the show. We got 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Charlie, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, I know you're a Vandy alum. So Vandy versus UT in football, or Vandy versus Kentucky in basketball? Which one gets you more pumped?
Personally, Vandy versus Kentucky in basketball. When I was in school there, they were very good, and that's the team that won the SEC tournament and beat Anthony Davis when I was a senior. The gym is a cheat code with the sunken floor, and it's very fun. Or when you're in the student section, you got to be essentially courtside, depending on when you lined up. We saw the peak of the Vandy football program in that Alabama game, and it ruled. I loved every second of it. But the basketball. When the basketball's humming, which it hasn't been for a while, it's a really fun atmosphere.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. Let's see. All right. Mina Kimes or Bill Barnwell? Who's the better guest that you enjoy the most?
Oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Better guest.
I enjoy both of them, by the way.
Let's go,
because Bill's funny.
Let's go off the board. I'm going to say Kevin Clark. Because I don't have to pick any of them.
Yeah, I hear you.
Honestly, it's so funny because like I work on Mina's YouTube channel, and she's like one of my dearest friends who I've worked with, and then Bill has been such a huge part of the show. So it's like it's actually really tough to rank because I have such different working relationships with both of them, but they're both just wonderful.
Got you. Let's see the next one: producer or being in front of the camera. Which one do you enjoy most?
Producer, hands down. I backed into the being in front of the camera thing. When you're a producer, they judge you for your ideas. When you're on camera, they judge you for how you say them and who you are.
Got you. I kind of enjoy both, man.
Yeah.
So I'm doing a little bit more. I'm kind of stepping into the realm of producing shows that I'm not actually on now. So that'll be fun to jump into.
Yeah, I mean, some of the production stuff is you get to be a lot more of a volume shooter. Oh, what do you think of this idea? This one,
yeah, there you go.
Filter before it gets to air.
Right. DC or Nashville? Which city do you enjoy the most?
Enjoy Nashville for sure. I'm from DC. I grew up in DC proper, and so coming back here, I love the city. It's home. It definitely feels small. Nashville's all good memories. Nashville's like, early 20s. This is an incredible place.
Broadway, probably.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Broadway, Demumbrian, all the
Broadway's insane. Broadway's insane now. It was
totally different when I was in school there. Like it wasn't blocked off type of like bachelorette party pedal tavern haven. Like the pedal tavern started my senior year, but it wasn't like it is now. But yeah, it's nuts. Oh, it's a special place. Nashville rocks.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, especially when you go out there now. And I actually do Lyft driving at night, so especially imagine my nights picking up people down on Broadway.
I can imagine. I can definitely imagine.
Yeah, I have to tell you about some of those, but let's see. The last one is for those that don't know. Of course, I found this out, and I didn't know this one until I kind of listened. I was like, hold up. Charlie was Alabaster. What is going on? But yeah, did you enjoy kind of the secret code name, or do you enjoy just going by Charlie?
Oh, I loved that role. That role was so fun because you were essentially Charlie, like you had that VOG voice of God. You're sort of the omnipotent producer who had all the answers. That was so fun. No, I didn't. I honestly, I think I prefer Charlie, but I didn't mind that at all. That was a really fun role to do on that show.
Gotcha.
Loved working. Pablo and Domonique were so fun to work with together too. So that was a really silly show.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too. I used to watch. I used to listen to that one too. I listened more than watching that one. I probably listen more than watch, but because I'm always on the move doing something. But yeah, I just have to ask though, how did that name come about?
Oh, so the first camera we had, when we were trying, so we had like a downward pointing camera that was looking at the cards that had the questions on it for debatable, and the first camera we had was from. Like we bought an Amazon camera that teachers use now to project onto boards. And I am a very pale person, but I'm not nearly as pale as that camera made me look because it didn't white balance. So it made my hands look like the color of like a 8x12 piece of paper, like that white. and like the first show, Domonique was like, look at those alabaster hands. And it just completely stuck. But yeah, no, it was, I would take the full admission to it, but like it was actually partially because of the camera. It like, I was like gray, ashen white because of this camera.
Wow. Wow. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. It's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You're off the hot seat, Charlie. I want to thank you for coming on the show. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media. Of course, tell them about the Domonique Foxworth show, whatever else you're working on.
Definitely listen to the Domonique Foxworth show. Subscribe to the podcast feed and social channels. It's Foxworth Show on Twitter and Instagram. Take a look at Mina Kimes' YouTube page. We're making some really cool stuff. It's her voice, her brand, her show. And some YouTube exclusives that are pretty fun and different from the content that ESPN's making. My socials, I've sort of deleted Twitter and Instagram off my phone, but it's Charlie Kravitz on Instagram or C Kravitz 17 on Twitter. If you have show questions, I check them occasionally. So just shoot them my way and I'll press Domonique with whatever questions you guys have.
Got you. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Hang on for a moment once we get off the air. I want to thank you for coming on the show and of course talking Commanders versus Titans. It's definitely going to be an interesting game indeed. After the Thanksgiving leftovers, you can turn on the TV and watch that game. But of course, if you don't know, I'm Mike Patton, the host of Touring the AFC South. You can find me on Instagram at the CHA, not THE _general_MP. And I'm also on Threads as well. You can also find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter and Blue Sky as Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82. Touring the AFC South you can find on all listening platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. And we're also on the YouTube as well. So you go ahead, subscribe, click the button so you don't miss any episodes. Of course, Spotify, go there, click the button, rate the show. I greatly appreciate it. This has been episode 309. The Titans head to DC. We're out. Peace.